Mark your calendars. We'll soon learn how much time a federal judge will give Sean Diddy Combs after he was convicted this summer on 2 prostitution-related charges. His high-powered defense attorneys are urging for release as they got some famous names to write letters of support for the Bad Boy Records founder. We're breaking down who's still on Diddy's side even after he was acquitted on the more serious charges of racketeering conspiracy and sex trafficking.
Diddy on his knees in front of a judge. Just sit with that image for a second because it's something nobody ever thought they'd witness. The man who built his entire life, his entire reputation, his entire empire on being untouchable, unstoppable, larger than life.
Diddy's lawyers wrote in a recent court filing their client has been punished enough, but will the judge agree next week when he officially sentences the mogul? Or will that even matter, as there still could be a possibility he could get a new trial? It's officially been more than a year since Sean Diddy Combs has been locked up in a federal detention center in Brooklyn, New York. Ahead of his trial, his lawyers pushed for pre-trial release, and that was denied after every request, even after he was only convicted on the Mann Act charges or transportation to engage in prostitution, as Diddy's lawyers chalk up those charges to an alternative or swingers lifestyle. But the judge still kept the mogul behind bars pending the outcome of his sentencing. In his ruling, Judge Arun Subramanian wrote, while Combs may contend at sentencing that this evidence should be discounted and that what happened was nothing more than a case of willing swingers utilizing the voluntary services of escorts for their mutual pleasure, the government takes the opposite view, that Cassie Ventura and Jane were beaten, coerced, threatened, lied to, and victimized by Combs as a part of their participation in these events. Diddy's federal trial had bombshell testimony seemingly every single day of trial. However, he was still acquitted on 3 of his 5 federal charges. However, that didn't mean his Hollywood peers publicly welcomed him back with open arms. There are some, though, who are supporting him ahead of his sentencing, like his former girlfriend, Caresha Brownlee, better known as Young Miami. She wrote in part, quote, my name is Caresha Brownlee. I'm a mother, daughter, sister, and a hip-hop artist who has spent many years in the public eye. I want to be clear that I cannot speak on or defend anything that may have happened before I met Sean Combs. I do not condone any wrongdoing. I can only speak from my personal experience and the man I've come to know over the past 4 years. One of my most meaningful memories was when he took me to my first Met Gala. It wasn't just about the event, it was about what it represented. Sean has always made it a priority to open doors for Black people to make it sure we are seen, heard, and valued in spaces where we've historically been excluded. That night reminded me that we belong in every room, at every table, and in every conversation. He's constantly encouraged me and so many others to dream bigger, walk in confidence, and never shrink who we are to make others comfortable. I've also witnessed him doing real inner work. He made the choice to check himself into anger management, start therapy, and commit to physical healing through therapy. That takes strength, humility, and self-awareness. He didn't do it for show. He did it because he wanted to grow and to become a better person. In my personal experience, Sean is not a danger or threat to the community. He is a man of God, someone who uplifts, supports, and inspires those around him to be better mentally, physically, and spiritually. But more than anything, he's a father, and his kids are the ones who look up to him the most. They need him. His presence, love, and guidance matter deeply in their lives. I truly believe that he belongs at home with his family, the people who mean the most to him, and who continue to be his greatest source of purpose and strength. Judge, that's a good man. Music producer Dallas Austin wrote in part, as I have become to know Sean over the years, he has become like a brother to me. I have always seen him as a man of unwavering dedication to his loved ones, his family, especially his mom and children. He is a devoted father whose family always comes first, and the balance he maintains between his personal and professional life is both inspiring and admirable. Former Love and hip hop star and music producer Stephen Jordan, aka Stevie J, wrote in part, being in this entertainment business for 30 years and being friends with Sean, we've both endured personal challenges with anger and drugs, as I've been going to therapy and taking all the necessary precautions never to look back at addiction again. I'm proud of Sean. I've read in the press that he's clean and sober and also taking anger management therapy to become a better person, because we all fall short as long as we correct ourselves and never revert to our old ways. Now that's just scratching the surface. The defense
Now reduced to something so raw and so human it sent shockwaves through the courtroom. For decades, Diddy strutted through life like nothing could break him. He was the mogul with the Midas touch, the party king who was always in control, the man who made the rules instead of following them. But that was then. Now, in front of the court, in front of cameras, in front of people who had once feared and respected him, he dropped the act. He went down to his knees, his voice shaking, his hands clasped, begging the judge for mercy, begging for freedom, begging in a way that left everyone in the room frozen. Witnesses said the silence was unlike anything they'd ever felt in a courtroom. Heavy, suffocating. People who had watched him march in week after week with that cold, stone-faced mask couldn't believe what they were seeing. Diddy had been trying to project control, trying to give off that same old aura that made him feel untouchable. Like he could finesse his way out of this storm the same way he had finessed his way out of so many other
the prosecutions to cases involving sex trafficking minors or defendants who engage in commercial prostitution enterprises as panderers or call girl operations. They wrote, quote, "In other words, only 1% of Mann Act cases we identified involved so-called buyers or Johns. That number alone speaks volumes and corroborates the conclusion that the DOJ does not seek to incarcerate Mann Act defendants who merely purchase prostitution services." During the trial, we learned through testimony what some of the male escorts or entertainers that were hired do during these freak-offs or hotel nights, and that was through the testimony of Daniel Phillips and Sheree Hayes, aka the Punisher. Diddy's defense argued this is the only case they've identified where prosecutors claim professional consenting adult males were Mann Act victims. Writing, "The government now claims that the male escorts were Mr. Combs' victims, but this is apparently the only case in Mann Act history where the government has argued that consenting professional adult male escorts or entertainers who made thousands of dollars were victims. The Mann Act did not originally treat men as victims, and Congress never anticipated such an application of the statute." They argue the time he served has been punishment enough, especially serving time at MDC Brooklyn. His team argued the mogul is routinely subjected to violence, both directed at him and at others. They point one example from less than 2 weeks ago, writing, "On September 12th, for example, defense counsel was in the middle of a legal video call with Mr. Combs, which was summarily ended at 2 p.m. because of a stabbing that locked the facility down for the next several days. They write living conditions at MDC remain inhumane, lockdowns remain common, and other conditions are similarly horrible. There are 10 different examples listed of what Diddy's life truly has been like behind bars, a far cry from his life of luxury, including constant suicide watch. This means that every 10 hours, Mr. Combs must present his identification card to the guards to show that he is alive and well. Limited access to clean water. Mr. Combs often heats his water to have clean water to drink without getting sick. Sleeping in a dorm-style room within 2 feet from other inmates with the bathroom in the same room with no door. Mr. Combs has not breathed fresh air in nearly 13 months or felt sunlight on his skin. Often walking with a limp due to a painful knee injury that requires surgery that he has not received in federal custody. Lack of access to healthy or edible food, which is essential to pre-diabetics. The food that Mr. Combs has survived on includes expired processed pork, chicken, and beef, which on any given day can contain maggots. Lack of physical exercise with weights or any proper equipment. No physical therapy for his several shoulder and knee injuries. No functioning washing machines/dryers. And extreme temperatures, freezing cold or burning hot. Now, after his trial and the dozens of lawsuits he faces, his lawyers argue that his legacy has been destroyed, stating, due to adverse publicity and the allegations which the jury rejected, he faces nearly 100 lawsuits, most of which have been filed by individuals he has never met before, all of which contain made-up claims by individuals seeking to profit from Mr. Combs' downfall. Unfortunately, these lawsuits have involved his family, with his 84-year-old mother being sued in several states by individuals and his sons also being sued alongside Mr. Combs. They go on to write, as bad as life is inside of MDC, Mr. Combs has suffered countless other losses. Since his incarceration and conviction on the Mann Act, these and other collateral consequences to his life have been personally devastating. He has been separated from his family, has mounting legal bills from the indictment and defending lawsuits that were the direct result of the United States Attorney Damian Williams' prejudicial press conference announcing this case, and has lived in MDC for over a year, despite having every intention on fighting this case from day one. His defense attorneys cite other instances where his life has been systematically dismantled. For example, after Cassie's loss
scandals in the past. But this time, the storm was too big. This time, the walls were too close. And when the judge laid it out that his chances of release were slipping away, it broke him. Completely. And this wasn't some half-hearted crack in his voice or a few tears running down his face. No. This was a collapse. A man who had built his entire life on pride, ego, and power literally going down on his knees in desperation. The court reporter wrote it down as an emotional breakdown, but people inside that room said those words don't even capture the gravity of it. They said you could see it in his eyes. The fear, the desperation, the realization that all the money and all the influence in the world couldn't save him this time. His words poured out, not with the polish of a rehearsed statement, but with the unsteady rhythm of someone who knew they were out of options. He said he couldn't make it another day behind bars. He said he wasn't the man people thought he was anymore. He said the threats, the violence, the constant fear were crushing him. And there was no bravado.
And the lawsuits after, his companies were unable to operate as they once were, and he had to let go of over 1,000 employees. Some employees, according to the document, were unable to get new employment because of their past association with the mogul. His federal case has also had devastating consequences for his children. They were canceled and lost business opportunities. The family's Hulu show was canceled after Cassie's lawsuit. He was removed from the boards of 3 charter schools he created. He was stripped of his honorary doctorate degree from Howard University. He was forced to return the key to the city of New York, and he had to step down from his TV network, Revolt, which, according to the filing, was one of 2 black TV networks in the United States. So in all, the defense is hoping the judge sentences him to a 14-month sentence, meaning if the judge sides with him, it's likely he could be out of jail before the holidays. As of this recording, though, prosecutors haven't submitted their recommendations for his sentencing, but they've previously said that he has an extreme history of violence and that the attempts to minimize his conduct show he's still very dangerous. So that was a lot, right? A lot of legalese, a lot of pages to go through. So let's break it down further with none other than criminal defense attorney Safa Robinson-Ferrer. Safa, always great to see you, and thanks so much for joining me. Let's take a little step back. It's almost sentencing time for Diddy. He needs support. The defense sent a bunch of letters, some including from Young Miami, Dallas Austin, Stevie J, the mothers of his daughters Love and Chance, his mom, his sister, all of his kids minus the youngest one. But what did you make of the letters of support?
I'm not surprised to see letters of support here. That's actually pretty typical as sentencing is about to commence, or shortly, at least a week or two before the sentencing commences. And a lot of times defendants and clients will submit letters that are on behalf of family members and loved ones, giving a clearer picture to the judge as to who this person is generally, or who this person is and what they mean to their family and their loved ones. And that's a part of what we call a mitigation or sentencing memorandum that goes to the court in order to get a lesser sentence, or to give the judge an idea of, this is a good guy, you know, mistakes happen or bad things happen, but he's been reformed, rehabilitated, and we as his family need him back.
And are you surprised more famous faces didn't come front and center to possibly also voice their support in favor of Diddy? I was surprised to only kind of see really the 3 standout names being Dallas Austin, Young Miami, and Stevie J, at least to me. But are you surprised other famous faces didn't also voice their support through letters, like maybe Ye, who attended the court that one day?
I'm actually not too surprised that we haven't heard more from some of the other celebrities, because I think that anybody with a pretty sound PR team is going to tell them to stay far away from this and to not give any opinions of it. I am kind of surprised that we haven't heard anything from Ye, but you know, that's his prerogative. Of course, he has shown his support throughout the trial, and anybody who is willing and wants to support Mr. Combs through the sentencing phase and provide a memorandum or a letter, then they're able to do that. But I think, considering what the defense has provided to the court, there have been significant amounts of letters and things of that nature that the judge can go off of to get another side of Mr. Combs, maybe different from what the judge has heard at trial.
Do you think any of the letters kind of swayed maybe even your opinion in terms of what we heard at trial versus kind of the aftermath, even, you know, before the trial began, that made you change your opinion in any type of way? I kind of felt like everything just felt kind of repetitive a little bit.
I think the most captivating letter that I got a chance to view was his mother's, and she makes a very good point. She's an 85-year-old woman, or in her mid-80s. She doesn't know how much time she has left on this earth. And so one of the things that I think is important, and what really spoke to me and would probably speak to the judge, is wanting the ability to spend the end of her life with her.
In his voice, no arrogance, no attempt to spin it, just raw pleading. He told the judge he was sorry, that he was broken, that he needed compassion, that he needed a chance to breathe outside those walls before something terrible happened to him. And for the people who knew him, who had seen him command boardrooms, who had seen him order entourages around like soldiers, who had seen him walk red carpets like a king, it was almost impossible to process. This wasn't the Diddy they recognized. This was a man stripped bare with all the layers of power peeled away, left exposed and fragile. But here's the cruel truth. A breakdown doesn't erase what's on the table. The judge didn't suddenly forget the pile of cases stacked against him. The public didn't suddenly forget the endless stream of allegations and lawsuits that painted him as a predator, a manipulator, a man who abused his power and destroyed lives in the process. That's what made the entire moment so surreal. Because as he was begging for compassion, the very people
granting them the ability to reconcile their relationship outside of him being incarcerated, also granting the ability for the family to essentially be reunited and to satisfy this mother's wishes of having her son reunited with his children, her grandchildren, so that they can heal, move forward, and spend the rest of her life or her last years together.
And, you know, Janice was a fixture at every single day at trial. I don't think there was a day she missed. She was there every single day inside that courtroom, making sure that her son had support during especially those hard parts of the testimony and hard parts of the trial. But what's your reaction to the defense asking for 14 months? Would that essentially mean if the judge goes in favor of the defense, is it possible that Diddy could walk out of that courthouse next week?
Absolutely. That is exactly the case. And that's what the defense is essentially going for, is that 14-month sentence, which I'm not exactly sure of the time calculation that he has spent incarcerated, but looking for essentially time served here so that he can go back home to his family. And as a part of the sentencing memorandum, and there are sentencing factors that the judge can consider in his determination. There's the guideline range on which Mr. Combs will fall. I think that the defense has essentially argued or will argue that 14 months is within the guideline range. I expect that the prosecution is going to argue that there's a higher guideline range for him, which I think maybe 51 months or something of that nature. I'm not completely sure. I don't have it in front of me. And so the judge is also going to take into consideration the nature of the offense, the rehabilitation, any threats to the community, all of those things. And he can even take into consideration some of the things he's heard at trial in order to make a determination of what the sentence is going to be with Mr. Combs. There's also some case law that I believe has been provided to the court from the defense that essentially says that individuals who have been sentenced on the Mann Act violations have not received a higher sentence or have not remained in custody as long as Mr. Combs would be facing. And I think there also may be some outstanding motions, and I don't know if they've resolved them yet, as far as asking for a new trial and things of that nature that I think the judge is going to address prior to sentence.
Yeah, and that'll be happening tomorrow. And I'll definitely be there for that, bright and early as usual. I'm thinking back to the time during trial I was covering it. But in terms of just that last point you were making, Safa, where the defense was kind of saying that Diddy's conviction in terms of the Mann Act convictions, count 3 and 5, are unlike any other cases that they were citing, because they cited plenty of cases. Now, obviously, I'm not a lawyer, so it was really kind of interesting just reading through everything. But in terms of the defense's argument, do you think that they make a solid argument that Diddy's conviction wasn't a situation where he was transporting minors across state lines or people against their will? The defense's main point, something that they've been arguing throughout the entire trial, was that these were consenting adults who were doing adult things, that this was a swinger lifestyle. Everything, again, was kind of within the whole consenting kind of circle here, but also that these entertainers or these escorts weren't paid for sex, that they were paid for time. But what's your reaction to the defense's argument?
I think the defense makes a pretty good argument there. And I think what we have to remember, and what the defense is trying to show the judge, is essentially, you know, he's been found not guilty on the most heinous charges, particularly the RICO offenses. The factual basis for the Mann Act charges really deal with an intimate personal relationship that he had with some of his girlfriends, that they just participated in this swinger type lifestyle, which is somewhat common here in the United States. And we've heard it before. Escorts are provided or spend time with individuals or are purchased for their time with couples. And if they decide to engage in sexual activity, then because they're all adults and they all consent to do that, then that is well within their right.
People watching him break down were asking if he even deserved it. Social media wasted no time. The second whispers of this breakdown leaked out. Timelines exploded. Some people were genuinely shaken. They said no matter what someone has done, watching a human being beg like that is hard to stomach. Others, though, were ruthless. They said this was karma. This was the universe finally cashing in on all the years he had escaped accountability. They said those weren't tears of sincerity. They were tears of fear. They called it a performance, an act from a man who only knew how to manipulate when the stakes were high. And that's the split that defines Diddy right now. Half the world sees him as a broken man who's hit rock bottom, stripped of all the armor he once wore. The other half sees him as a wolf crying sheep, finally tasting the same fear he inflicted on others. And no matter which side you're on, the one undeniable fact is this. Diddy
expect a chance that he's going to be released. So that's their big motivating factor, of course. Whether the court abides by that, I mean, it is a substantial change in circumstance. He was acquitted of all of these serious charges, right?
But he was just denied bail. He was denied bail again.
He was denied bail again, and I actually learned that on your segment yesterday afternoon as I was sort of doing my preparation for this. But we have to remember that one of the things that he got in trouble for, that Diddy got in trouble for in jail, was using other inmates' calling number. Remember that? So he was calling witnesses in the case from jail using other inmates. That was a direct affront to that judge. That was remember, we had all those attempts at bail that were denied at the very beginning of the case, one after another after another. This judge, and it's the same judge who's going to sentence him, denied that over and over again. And you and I, again, in another conversation we had on your show, we both said he is screwed now, that he's got no chance because he's violating the rules of the court while in jail. So if he's disobeying the rules of the jail and the directive of the court while he's in custody, how can he be expected to actually follow the terms of a bail agreement when he's out of custody?
Right.
And I think that chicken is coming home to roost again. I mean, I think that's what happened yesterday afternoon. That any judge who has a criminal defendant who behaves like that is an affront to the court itself. It's disrespectful to the court. And it's almost like he couldn't get out of his own way there at the beginning. But he had an excellent defense team.
He does. So assuming for a moment, whenever the sentencing hearing happens, right? Let's say it happens in a month from now. Let's say it has October 3rd. The question is, what's his sentence? As we mentioned, the prosecution in a filing from yesterday talked about the guidelines range being 51 to 63 months. Now, this is before a pre-sentencing investigation and report. Now, the defense, right, they want 21 months. He's already served almost 10. Talk to us about what you're thinking here, because there is no minimum. The maximum's 10. If the judge were to combine it together, like you said, 20 years, feels highly unlikely that would happen. As we're taught, what is a pre-sentencing report investigation? How would it affect this? What do you think the judge is going to do? There's so many different factors to consider here, and it's not like a murder case when it's like, okay, we know what's going to happen. It's like life in prison without the possibility of parole. It's a given. There's room here. What do you think the judge is going to do?
So in federal court, this is actually very interesting. They rely very heavily on those pre-sentencing investigations. So essentially what will happen is there'll be a federal probation officer, and they do these for almost every case, where they will do their own investigation, where they'll talk to family members, they'll talk to employers, they'll talk to neighbors, and they will make a recommendation to the court as to suitability for release, suitability for time. And that's something that federal judges traditionally really adhere to. They tend to put a lot of weight on those, far more than they do in state court. The probation department can make a recommendation, but the DA will certainly have more ability, most of the time, to talk a judge in or out of a sentencing recommendation from the probation department. Federal court is different. They really put a lot of weight on those. So that's something that I think is going to be very interesting. And a lot of that will come down to what the individuals involved in that investigation, even though it shouldn't impact their professional recommendation. It's really, I think we're going to see what they thought of the case.
He has never been this low. Think about what this means for his legacy. The man who wanted to be remembered as a mogul, a visionary, an icon, now has this courtroom breakdown burned into the public memory. Not the yachts, not the awards, not the parties, not the lavish lifestyle. This moment, him on his knees begging for mercy, is now one of the defining images of his story. It's the snapshot that will stick. The one that people will bring up whenever they talk about the rise and fall of Diddy. And the irony here is brutal. For years, he lived like the rules didn't apply to him. He could buy his way out of problems, silence his critics, intimidate anyone who tried to challenge him. He played the game better than most. But in that courtroom, none of that mattered. The system isn't moved by bravado. The judge isn't swayed by the swagger of a music mogul. And for once in his life, Diddy had no cards left to play. This is what happens when the empire crumbles. This is what happens when the power fades. You're left with the raw truth. And in Diddy's case, the raw truth was a man begging on his knees. And whether the judge shows him mercy or not, whether he walks out or stays locked in, this image has already sealed a part of his fate. Because even if he gets out, even if he manages to claw his way back, he'll never escape the memory of the day he broke down in front of the world. His lawyers tried to spin it. They said it showed his humanity, his vulnerability, his desperation to prove he wasn't a danger. But you can't spin desperation. People saw what they saw, and they're not forgetting it. This breakdown wasn't just a personal collapse. It was a cultural moment. It was the moment when the illusion shattered, when the world realized that even the most powerful can be dragged down to their knees. It was the ultimate symbol of how far he's fallen, how fragile he's become, and how little control he has left. And his words cut through the silence. Reports say he told the judge he couldn't survive another day locked up, that the threats, the violence, the constant fear were destroying him. He said he wasn't the man the world thought he was anymore. He begged for mercy, begged for compassion, begged for a second chance. And for once, he wasn't talking like the superstar who owned everything. He was talking like a man who had lost it all. But here's the thing. For the court, for the public, for the people who have watched his downfall from the outside, this breakdown didn't erase the weight of what's hanging over him. The judge didn't suddenly forget the allegations, the lawsuits, the cases piling up. The people watching didn't forget the accusations that painted him as a predator, a manipulator, someone who used his power to crush others. That's what made this moment so surreal. Because while he was begging for his life, the world was still asking whether he deserved the mercy he was demanding. Social media went into chaos the second this news leaked. Some people felt pity, saying it was hard to watch a human being break like that, no matter what they had done. Others called it nothing more than crocodile tears, a desperate performance from a man who only knows how to play the game when he's cornered. And the division has never been sharper. And that's what makes this so haunting. Because for years, Diddy seemed like the guy who could survive anything. He dodged scandals, he maneuvered through lawsuits, he came out clean when others would have drowned. But this time, no amount of money, no amount of influence, no amount of ego could protect him from the reality staring him in the face. He's no longer untouchable. He's no longer invincible. He's just another man in front of a judge, begging. Whether you see it as justice, karma, or tragedy, one thing is clear. This moment will follow him forever. It's carved into the story of his downfall. A reminder that no matter how high someone rises, the fall can strip them of everything, even their pride. Diddy once told the world he couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. But in that courtroom, the truth was laid bare. He did stop. He had to. Because the only move left was to fall to his knees and beg. And that's the moment that proved everything had changed.